Violence occurring at a state prison is not shocking, especially one that houses maximum security inmates, which brings us to Ione, California, Mule Creek State Penitentiary. And recently, Mule Creek State Penitentiary has made national news because two women, just 4 months apart, were murdered at that prison during conjugal visits. And very few prisons in the United States still allow conjugal visits. And according to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, strict criteria must be met for an inmate to be approved for conjugal visits. And conjugal visits are held in apartment-like buildings located on penitentiary grounds and last between 30 and 40 hours. Every 24 hours, inmates are expected to show themselves to guards, kind of like a count that's done in the regular prison. And in that 24-hour period, inmates are expected to show themselves to the guards at least 4 times. What's interesting is who is allowed to apply for these conjugal visits and who is not allowed to apply for conjugal visits. And in California, death row inmates, sex offenders in reception centers process, or under disciplinary restrictions are not allowed family visits. That makes me wonder, what is the reception center process? Is that the inmate has just gotten to that prison? And if the sex offender is not in the reception center process, is the sex offender allowed a conjugal visit? I'm probably guessing that yes, they are if they meet the criteria, because inmates serving life sentences, multiple life sentences, convicted of violent crimes are allowed to apply for conjugal visits. The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation says that conjugal visits are created and allowed to support the inmate through family and to help with rehabilitation, even if that inmate is serving life without the possibility of parole. I mean, just look at the name of the California Department of Corrections. In most states, it begins with the name of the state and it ends with Department of Corrections. But no, California is California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And apparently the state of California believes that no matter how violent the crime or the sentence the inmate is serving, that an attempt at rehabilitation should be made, which brings us to two women on conjugal visits just 4 months apart who were strangled to death during conjugal visits. 62-year-old Stephanie Dowles married 54-year-old inmate David Brinson. And I don't think Miss Dowles being 8 years older than her husband is a big deal, though some people have made a buzz about it. Well, David Brinson was serving life without the possibility of parole. He was convicted in 1994 of killing 4 men in an armed robbery in 1990. Dow's mother said that she was the glue that held the family together, and her daughter-in-law said that Stephanie Dow's and David Brinson would read the Bible together and that Brinson was in school while incarcerated because Stephanie was pushing him to try to be a better person. Right now, David Brinson is serving his time at the California Healthcare Facility in Stockton. Around 2 a.m., Brinson got in touch with authorities and he told them that his wife had passed out. And after several attempts of trying to revive her, Stephanie Dowles was pronounced dead at 2:51 a.m. Just 4 months later, Tanya Thomas, 47, she would also be found dead during a conjugal visit. She met her husband, Anthony Curry, in 1999, and after she discovered she was pregnant, Curry, quote unquote, disappeared with another woman. And while Tanya Thomas was in labor with their child, she saw Anthony Curry on the news accused of shooting another woman in the head and dumping her body. Curry's victim, Sonata Brown, she would survive that shot to the head, but she was left blind and partially paralyzed. And Anthony Curry was sentenced to 30 years to life for attempted second-degree murder. So Tanya Thomas reunited. She got back together with Curry after he was behind bars, and she married him without telling her family in 2023. Reportedly, Curry was denied parole last year in 2024, and he asked Thomas to wait for him. Both women were strangled to death, and in Tanya Thomas's murder charges have been filed against her husband, Anthony Curry. How many of you are shocked to find out that conjugal visits are actually still a thing in some American penitentiaries? And how many of you are shocked that inmates serving multiple life sentences, or like Anthony Curry, Tanya Thomas's husband, serving 30 years to life for attempted second-degree murder of a woman that he supposedly was intimately involved with, was actually allowed to be alone with their wives for 30 to 40 hours at a time, having only to show themselves maybe every 6 hours. People have always wondered, what is it that makes a prison wife? And why would a woman choose a man convicted of a violent crime, serving 30 years to life, serving multiple life sentences? But I have more questions about who it is that is allowed conjugal visits and California's attempt to rehabilitate inmates that it looks like will never, ever, ever see the free world again. So this program, conjugal visits, overwhelmingly successful. No violence occurs during them, and inmates are on good behavior if they've got an application in to receive or to be approved for conjugal visits. What do you all think? Do you all think that conjugal visits should be allowed for any inmate? Or should conjugal visits be restricted to inmates convicted of nonviolent offenses? I don't know the psychology behind what makes a woman marry an inmate, much less an inmate who will likely not ever see the free world again. In my opinion, this is obviously domestic violence taken to an extreme end. If anybody's interested, Anthony Curry is set to be arraigned in April for the murder of Tanya Thomas. If you're still with me, do me a favor, hit the like button and drop me a comment. Do you think that conjugal visits should be allowed at all? And if you do think that conjugal visits should be allowed, do you think that conjugal visits should be restricted to inmates convicted of nonviolent crimes who have a actual possibility of seeing the light of day again outside of prison walls?